Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. Tonight, we have one hell of an experience for you. I came across a video on YouTube with a gentleman talking about his experience. It was just him and a camera. And I must admit, when I first saw it, I was blown away. I didn't know whether to believe it, if it was a hoax or what. So I figured the only way I could get more information would be to talk to the person directly. I figured if I messaged him and he responded, then that led to a little bit more credence. So I did message this person. They got right back to me, and then we discussed him coming on the show tonight. And he was up for that. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you a short clip from the video that I'm talking about. And then when we come back, we'll actually be talking to the person that you're going to be seeing in this video. Okay? So take a look at this video. 30 seconds, 45-second clip, something like that. It's just a short piece of the overall video. But take a look at this, and then when you come back, we'll talk to Mr. Aaron Evans.
Okay, I tried to post this earlier, but they don't let you keep the tape going that long. The point is, what I'm trying to tell you is, when the last time you seen a black person that had balls enough to come out and tell you that he was abducted by freaks, aliens, or has seen them, or has been near a vessel. Last time I heard, it was the Barney and Betty Wright Hill story, where Barney Hill, whatever his name was Barney. He was he was married to a white lady, big deal. But the point is, him and his old lady got abducted. So since then, you don't see no brothers running around talking about that they've been abducted before, right? When I was a kid, I went out into the woods in 1989. I was 17 years old. I went into the woods. Something had landed out there, me and another friend. We went out there, we looked, and I opened up the shrubs, and I got blasted by a pulse of light, and I was knocked down. I was put inside of this vessel. There was 3 different freaks there. One of them.
Well, there you have it, folks. I'm sure you're probably saying, what? That's kind of what I did. But we're going to hear more about it from the man who was in the video. So, Mr. Aaron Evans, are you out there, sir?
Yeah, I'm right here.
All right. Can you speak up just a bit so that we can make sure that we hear you?
Okay, can you hear me right there?
Yeah, talk directly into the phone.
Okay.
So, Aaron, this video, I think when people first see it, they are probably, bending their heads a little bit. So, where did all of this begin? This began when you were a child, did it not?
Yes, it did. Originally, when I was about 6 years old, I had a occurring situation that seemed like it happened one time that I remember. When I walked down the staircase of my basement, I was told to come downstairs by a small, white, grayish-looking creature. He wasn't white. He was more like a pale yellow color. And I thought he was Casper the Friendly Ghost because that was a popular show and a cartoon that was around. So as a child, I just assumed he was a friendly ghost. I walked down the staircase, and by a hot water heater is where he stood. He had black eyes, and he seemed to talk to me inside of my head instead of with his mouth. Because I had no knowledge of this at 6 years old. There was a circular craft that was probably a foot off the ground. It was a circular disc, and it was underneath the staircase. I was scratching my head at 6 years old, wondering how could a metallic object be underneath the staircase? How did it get inside the house? I'm thinking it must have came in through the door. It was anchored wasn't even moving. I went to go to try to touch it, and this being told me, do not touch it, it will make you sick. But as a child, I just kept trying to get my hands to this, and it seemed like the being was forcibly pushing me away from the craft mentally. How would I know this? So eventually I got my hands on it by just pushing, because I just was hard-headed. I touched it, and I immediately became really sick. Then I heard my mother calling for me, and I ran up the staircase, tried to tell her what I saw, and I was in hot sweats. Woke up the next day with a humidifier in the bedroom with a temperature. I didn't go to school that day. Later on that afternoon, before school got out for the afternoon, maybe around 1:30, 1 o'clock, somewhere around that time, a helicopter with letters and numbers underneath it came down close to the house, close to the telephone poles, and they were waving at me out of the helicopter with the side door open, like they were proud of me or something. It didn't make any kind of sense. My mother seen the chopper. She goes, hey, look at the chopper. Can you believe this chopper's waving us? Look at Aaron. She thought it had something to do with an air show, and they were just trying to advertise it to get people to come to the air show. That's what she was thinking. But to me, I knew it had something to do with what happened in the basement.
So let me ask you, what year are we talking about here when this happened?
This would have had to have been 77.
77.
1977, you know.
And this, so the being first appeared in your bedroom and told you to come downstairs into the basement?
Come downstairs into the basement. No sooner than I walked up into the hallway, he wasn't there, just that quick. Then when I got to the edge of the basement, the edge of the foyer part where you start to go downstairs, he was standing there for a fraction of a second when I first was coming around the kitchen. No sooner than I looked, he wasn't there either. And when I finally got downstairs, that's where he was, by the hot water heater.
And this craft was, I think you said like 3 feet in diameter, something like that? It was semi-small.
It was about 3.5 feet tall. 3.5 feet wide, round. It was probably about a foot off of the ground, and it seemed to be anchored in place.
When you say anchored, what do you mean by anchored?
It just seemed to be sitting in one spot. It wasn't moving. When I pushed it, when I got sick from pushing it, it was obviously radiation poisoning. When I pushed it, it moved just a tiny bit, and it went right back into place where it was it's like a magnet.
Ah, okay.
It's like if a magnet had something sitting in one spot. Very unusual. I wasn't supposed to know that at 6, 7 years old. A 6, 7-year-old is not supposed to be telling an adult or his 12-year-old sister that's what's going on. I didn't have any knowledge of it. So there's no way I should be telling that story at that age.
Right, exactly. And the entity did not look like a run-of-the-mill common gray. I think you said it was not the classic gray shape or color, or was it?
It was the classic gray. The only thing about this gray was he seemed to be no more than 3.5 feet tall. Yeah. He was like a pale, he was like a yellowish opaque color. He had black eyes, really big black eyes, but he didn't look aged like some of the ones you see for illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have an aged face for a gray. His face was very smooth.
So almost made you think he was like he looked young in age?
Like he was, yeah, I don't know how old they can live or how long they live or, whether they're shapeshifters or what exactly they can do. I mean, I think the grays are actual, some type of human DNA and material, but they're workers. They seem like more. I mean, these shorter ones are workers. I've heard people talk about taller ones that are 7 foot,
mm-hmm.
like Phil Schneider said. I mean, those, I don't think you're going to boss them around. But I think the shorter one would be more like a worker, even for ones that are taller.
So now this was just the first part of your life story. So that was 1977. The next part of the story takes place in year what?
was 1989.
1989, okay. 12 years later.
12 years later, which seemed like, you know, this guy's working out, I'm working out, I'm going to the YMCA every day, I'm training in martial arts. I chalk that memory up as riot syndrome or something from using Tylenol medication. Because I remember they started putting warnings on it, and they showed it on 2020 it was making kids sick. So I thought that was part of hallucinations, but there were certain things about aspects of the story that just didn't make any sense.
So you're talking about you're talking about the experience you had as a kid.
As a kid.
Yeah, you thought it was some type of fever hallucination or something.
Exactly. But in the back of my mind, it still, the sickness was so real. I don't know. I just really at that time did not. I go back and forth mentally, but it didn't stay on my mind too much because the manipulation was at such a young age. I didn't catch on to it. So I'm sure there probably was other manipulation before that.
Right.
That I wasn't aware of. I'm pretty sure of that because, you know, when I start to think about it, you know, the breathing starts to get messed up. You start to have these other thoughts about, you know, that there's other parts that led to that last scenario in 77 at the time. There was other parts to it. It was elusive. Like
okay.
Checking up to see if they're there. You know, I remember that prior. Like, I thought I saw you. I thought I seen something. You know, you're not quite, you don't know quite what exactly happened. That's a blur.
Hey, you could have had some missing time or something. You never know.
I'm sure.
So jump ahead 12 years. It's 1989. You're a young man now, teenager. I take it you were outside with a friend or a group of friends. What? And let us know where this happened. Would you? Where this next part of the story happened in? Where?
Okay, I say it was about 10:40. It was in the peak of the summer, right, say about 15 minutes right before it's going to get dark at 11 o'clock.
And in what
so
city?
It was just getting dark. Say about 10:45, Muskegon, Michigan.
Muskegon, Michigan. Okay.
Yep. It was on Hudson Street.
Hudson Street, and I'm going to show a picture of that.
Old car.
I'm going to show a picture of the exact place where this supposedly took place. It is in a group of trees at the end of Hudson Street. So go ahead, tell us what happened, Aaron.
Well, we were sitting on 2260 block of Hudson, which is a half a block away from where you start to get to the woods right there, on that dead-end road right there. We've seen a craft or something coming downward. We've seen flame coming from underneath it, like orange heat. You know, we're looking at each other. This guy's name, Skip Cantrell. I can't say that. They don't mind because it's the truth. And the other guy's name was Donald Myers. He's since passed away from cancer. But he was 10 years older than me and this other individual. So he'd have been 24 years old when I was 17. Okay, we seen it land, and me and the younger guy, we looked at each other and we said, we're going out there. The older guy said, please don't go out there. He just said, don't do it. I don't know what it is, but don't go. We said, we're going, because we knew it wasn't normal, and we knew if we didn't go out there and take a look, we wasn't ever gonna know the truth. We just felt like that, like something said, do you want to know the truth? You know, you watch TV and you see all these shows, and then here's something landing right in the woods. We can go through these woods practically blindfolded in the dark. That's how good we lived and hang out in those woods. So we just shot out there like a couple athletes. And as we got to the open field area of the field where there used to be a strawberry field, it was all white light enveloping out of these shrubs behind these row of trees. We can't see what it was, but the light was arcing like white light from a welding kit. That bright, sometimes even brighter. Might have one of the stronger spotlights, but it would move, shift. Then there were these odd arcing sounds coming out of it, like like large cables that you would see that were broke down in the street or something, like, you know, you know that sound.
Right, like it's shorting out against ground or something.
Right, and then you heard like a spring coil, bing, with a boom. It's really odd tones. Didn't make any sense. Couldn't make any sense out of it. There was, you know, some slight thunderous sounds, and then like transistor, like grinding metal. That was another sound we heard. It sounded like it was having issues, but it might have just been a trick because I don't think anything was wrong with it. I'm not sure, but the point is we were walking up slowly, and as the closer we got, our feet seemed like we couldn't move as we walked closer and closer to the object. Whatever it was behind the shrub, I started feeling like I think we better leave, but something inside of me said, don't be a coward. You're a tough young man. You're a soldier. You got to see. You just got to know. And I knew it wasn't right, but I just kept walking forward. And it got harder and harder to walk forward. It was awful.
Well, was this a force, you think? A force that was pushing back on you, or what?
It was an electromagnetic field, as far as I'm concerned now. That's what it would be. An electromagnetic field. That's what it was, giving off some type of electromagnetic field. It was causing all kinds of major disturbances in the environment. Everything went completely silent. You couldn't hear any birds. It's almost like somebody sucked the air out of the atmosphere right there. It's almost like everything just kind of stood still, like the trees weren't moving. Everything in that vicinity wasn't on the same time frame as anything outside of that vicinity. Basically is what I'm telling you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, did you continue towards the craft?
Yes, we did. We continued towards the craft. We got closer and closer to, I'm sorry, it might be my kid hollering in the background.
That's okay.
I got a family. Okay, so we got closer and closer to the craft. We got right in foot's length of this thing. I got down on my knee, and I opened the shrubs up, and I seen cryptographic writing, and I seen a metal that looked like stainless steel, just like a trim mold on a door or, you know, around a wall. You know, maybe 2.5 inches, maybe 2 inches wide exactly. Just a straight line, like the trim molding, but it had writing on it. I said, well, that writing is not right. Okay, it's a spaceship. Okay, time to go. I'm instantly scared. Now I know I screwed up. Something told me, you know what, you're not getting out of here the way you came in, buddy. You just screwed up. You've been played. So I went to stand up, and that's when a plume of light shot out from underneath this thing. It just shot out a plume of light. That plume of light, when I was on my knee, when I went to try to stand up at the same time, I fell face forward, and I couldn't move. So my face was just in the dirt. My forehead was, and my eyes are wide open, but I can't move. And I was able to move my neck, but not move my waistline. Not be able to move my spine, but I could move my neck. I turned my head back and looked, and that's when I seen a skeleton image coming towards me.
Now this is the part. This is the part that really sounds bizarre to me, because when you were telling me the story, I thought for sure you were going to describe some type of gray entity or something, but that's not what you saw. You saw something that resembled a skeleton.
Yes, he was he had you know what a plasma ball of light looks like inside of one of those glass canisters?
Right.
Well, you put your hands on it, it moves around your fingers. This thing had an object in the center, square in the center of its chest that resembled a plasma ball. Everything was coming from off of that. So the image it was projecting, it was actually that ball. Now when you get older, you realize it wasn't the actual. He was projecting the image of a skeleton to probably terrify us. So this thing was able, whatever this particular being was, he was able to shift to whatever kind of design he wanted to be as an outline. He could just do that to mess with you. And he could move objects, because what happened after that, when it came up behind me, it grabbed me by my wrist and it pulled me towards its craft. It pulled me like I was nothing. I weighed 187 pounds. It snatched me up with one hand and yanked me across the ground like I weighed 20 pounds. I looked up. I didn't realize at first what I was looking at because it happened so quick. This is what I'm saying after the fact. When I looked up, there was this creature, this thing, was holding me by my wrist, and it turned back and looked at me with the most menacing look. Well, it was a skeleton face. So, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I passed out in fear. I actually shook. My body trembled, and I passed out. And it wasn't because of something he did to me. At that point, it's because I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it defied all logic.
Now, how tall are we talking this entity was?
He looks like he was a 5'5" guy. He wasn't very tall. He might have been a 5'5"er. That's what he looked like. He was a short little guy, but he wasn't a guy. Like I said, he was nothing more than that, but he was projecting that image because everything was coming off of that. Like that's what was holding it together. Like it could shift into something else anytime it decided to, this particular entity.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So this round globe, plasma globe, was acting as some type of projection unit and projecting this human skeleton type image of itself to you.
Which is death to a human. When you see a skeleton, you automatically think death.
Oh, absolutely.
It looked like an X-ray. He looked just like an X-ray. And you see a skeleton, whatever it was doing, it knew how to control you. It knew how to strike fear in you. So that was one of his tactics. It probably been working for a long time. So I'm just saying.
Now, where was your friend that followed you in? Did your friend follow you into the woods, right?
What's that now again? I didn't catch that. Sorry.
I said, did your friend follow you into the woods? And where was he at?
Yes. He got drug along too. But I was so terrified by what was going through me, I didn't see him till we got inside, when I started to come to. And I seen him back in the corner. They had him backed up behind them.
Okay, so wait a minute here.
Standing behind.
Wait a minute here. So you're saying that this entity that looked like a skeleton pulled you and your friend into the craft?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah, well.
All right.
I don't think I caught your question exactly. We kind of broke up there for a second, but.
So.
He was. Okay, I hear you.
Okay, so you and your friend are now in the craft.
Yep.
Okay, what happens
We're
next?
in the craft. We're in the craft. Okay. I'm sitting on one side of the craft in a small bench-like surface that was up against the wall base of this craft. So I'm just sitting there like there's a little space, like a little waiting space, like a little bench. I never quite looked at that. The floors had a great metal look to them. You could see through the floors. I was trying to soak up as much as I can. Now remember, I'm waking up, sitting down, but sitting up. So I'm coming to. I'm looking over to the left of me. There's the gray. There's the 3-foot gray, the 3.5-foot gray. He's looking at me with his large eyes. That's the first thing I see. He's right in front of my face. He couldn't have been no more than a foot away from me, a foot and a half. He's keeping a very close eye on me. Just in case I decide I want to try to split. That's why he was standing there. I looked in his eyes, and I kept looking at him, and then I swear, this is hard for me to, because no other one looks like this particular one. Each one of these things, some of these beings have different characters, I'm starting to realize. They don't all look alike, even though they look alike. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I started thinking it was the same exact being I saw when I was 6 years old. And I said that inside of my head. And I don't know if he was projecting that thought to me to let me know that that was him. Yeah, you remember me, don't you? And I said, you know what? I said to him flat out, I said, I remember you. And that's when the light beam to the far right corner of me said, stop looking at him. Stop staring at him inside of my head, like a hollering at me. Then when I looked at the gray, all of a sudden when I had looked at him for a second, this deep chill just went across my whole body, like he was going to just pull my insides out of me. I felt like I was going to be turned inside out. There was so much, like, hate, like a kind of hate I've never, like, it could just rip me apart. And that's why I think they told me to look away from him, because I don't know if I was able to get inside of his head somehow, because some of us have natural talents. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like I was either he projected the thought, because people say there's staring episodes where they transcend information. I don't think necessarily that was the information he was trying to give me. I don't know what was going on, but I'm pretty sure it was him. He's pretty much landing in that district right there. He comes back. They come back repeatedly. That's what I'm thinking. But anyways, let's get to the point of it. They told me to stand up, and there was a board. There was nothing underneath it. It was all white. It looked like plastic. I said, why do I need to get on this board when I can just walk up here and just get up here and sit down? This thing hollered at me in my head, told me to get up on this board. I went from the board to this spot. Then they let me get up off the board. They proceeded to stand behind me, and they shoved a metal object down my back.
Down your back?
They were shoving a metal object down my back, and they were extracting something and pulling at the same time. So it looked like they were embedding something and taking something out at the same time. Now, need I remind you, when I first got inside of the craft, a memory that I had a hard time dealing with, this is how the blackout took place in the first place. When I first got inside the craft, I was held down by all three beings. They let a metallic, millipede-like creature crawl up my leg, and I'm screaming. It's got red eyes like a demon. I'm screaming, and this thing is coming up my leg. I'm just fighting like a freaking soldier with everything I had, but there was no way. I mean, I was kicking that I wasn't having. I mean, I was doing like just hollering and screaming to get away from this thing. It got right up on my stomach, and it crawled right up in my face. They held me down and shot right through my nose. And that's when I remember everything just blacking out.
The answer is to keep it. You'll believe it when you